If you are in the UK, good evening. If you're in the US or Canada, good afternoon.
If you are in Japan or the land down under, maybe you're hanging out with a kangaroo. Good morning. Welcome to the Magic of Wrestling podcast.
Do you think people actually hang around with kangaroos?
I think they box kangaroos. There's videos of like kangaroos boxing with people, which is kind of
Yeah,
interesting. And in the video game Tekken 2, they actually had a kangaroo that you could play as that had boxing gloves on. So I think that's a very real possibility.
it is, of course. And of course, this is obviously to our very special show. We're doing the highs and lows of so many guys called Shawn Michaels. I'm sure you know him as well.
Oh, yeah. The Heartbreak Kid, baby.
Of course. But in turn, roll the intro. It is, of course, Saturday night again. It's time for the Magic of Wrestling. I am one half of the host, Liam Wakeland.
And I am the effing expert, Mr. Isaacs. Hello, everybody.
Good, of course. How's your week been, Mr. Isaacs?
Oh, man, it is busy. Busy as all hell can be, man. I am all over the place. We went and got a brand new refrigerator. It got stuck in the bed of my truck. Had to deal with that this morning. A lot of fun. I'm pretty fatigued.
Pretty fatigued, and yeah, I mean, it's been one of those weeks as well for me. I mean, the weather's absolutely like really hot over here, so we're all like,
it rained here all week.
I mean,
all week we had nothing but rain, and every time it rains, I get headaches because barometric pressure causes me to get migraines. So yeah, it's been a tough week.
ouch! I wouldn't say I've done anything exciting, but by sounds you've had a headache all week. Yeah, I mean, but of course it's Saturday night again. It's time for the Magic of Wrestling. This is obviously a good show. I mean, we've obviously got to do the highs and lows of HBK, but we've got to do one thing which is probably one of big part of our show. It's called the Magic Weekly. Let's do it.
Boom.
Oops. And we've already got our first comment, and I believe it's from Effing Wrestling, who says, is loving the red.
Oh yeah, man! Thank you very much. I had to bring out the red aviators for the day because I'm seeing everything cool today.
Speaking of cool, so this is obviously part of our show where we take a deep dive into the wrestling world. So I will hand you over to Mr. Isaacs. What's been going on in the wrestling world?
Well, in the Magic Weekly, we have got a little bit of controversy in AEW, which I love to talk controversy. You know this. Like, I love to talk about this stuff. We're going to start off with the CM Punk promo from AEW Collision, where he takes a shot at the Young Bucks. Now, did you see this, Liam?
I did.
Yeah, so he referred to himself as One Bill Phil, like 1 billion, I imagine is what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. He's One Bill Phil, the only genuine article in an industry full of counterfeit bucks.
Now, obviously, we know he's obviously taking a dig at there, but the one thing when I obviously watched that is I remember obviously like the books are obviously poking fun at Punk as well, so it's kind of like whatever you can do, I can do better.
Turnabout is fair play. I am a firm believer in that, and yeah, you know when they came out in Chicago after Brawl Out, and they were kind of tongue in cheek making fun of Punk, you know, Omega biting people and you know that kind of stuff. They knew what they were doing. Turnabout's fair play here, man. I think this is great. I just hope that at some point these guys can get together and make some money off of this, and I think they will. Yeah, I think when the smoke clears a little bit, I think they're going to make some money off of this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they will. I think it's obviously inevitable. I think you've got an actual real life storyline there. But did you read that obviously with Punk at Dynamite this week, the Elite and Kenny Omega wasn't actually there?
Yeah. They had like a backstage segment. And it's like, we got to keep these guys separated or what's going to happen. You know, it's like, I get it because they were in Chicago,
Hmm.
and Chicago is so white hot for CM Punk. There's no telling what would have happened if they'd sent the elite guys out to the ring, but it would have been fun to see.
Oh yeah, it definitely would. But I mean, like I said, I mean, I'd just love to see some sort of storyline, with that because it's like it's money. Do you know what I mean? It's the key thing you've just said there. It's
They've
absolutely
got
money.
to. They've absolutely got to monetize this problem. They've got to. They are ridiculous if they don't. And I know this episode is all about Shawn Michaels and kind of bringing it full circle here. Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart hated each other, absolutely despised each other, but they
Yep.
worked so well together and they put it behind them and made money. That's what you
Yeah.
do as a professional in this business. You put the personal stuff aside and you
Hmm.
make money.
No, and I think you're on point there because not obviously Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. There's obviously there's more other like feuds we can obviously think of who actually hate each other. Edge and Matt Hardy is probably one which comes to my thing. They hated
Oh
each other,
yeah.
but they work so well together. Do you know what I mean? There's so many feuds you can literally name off.
Well, I think that the Edge and Matt Hardy thing, I obviously, that was a major thing. Edge
Hmm.
kind of taking Lita away from Matt Hardy. I do think that they buried the hatchet before they actually went on TV and did that feud.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, even so, you're taking real life heat and you're monetizing it, and that was white hot, and the internet was going crazy over that because I didn't know if that was a shoot or if that was a work.
Yeah, and like I said, I just pray to God that obviously this storyline, gets basically go on TV because it will obviously get a lot of people talking. I'm, I just a little follow up question I've got to this: are you tired and sick of all this punks like BS?
Uh, I just want to see. I just want to see some money drawn from this.
Hmm.
That's all. I mean, obviously the Punk stuff's going to die down after a week or two of him being back. It's going to be back to business at this point, but they've got to strike while the iron's hot, man. I want to see some money generated here.
Of course, we shall definitely see, but hopefully it's sooner rather than later. So, what else we got?
And this kind of leads into my next point here, which is something that Dave Meltzer alleges happened at Dynamite, where he says that a top AEW star, an unnamed top AEW star, was in a bad mood because CM Punk was in the building for Dynamite, and they were supposedly told that they weren't going to have to deal with CM Punk in person anymore. And this prompted Dax Harwood of FTR to tweet in response, quote, "This one will get me some heat, but F it. It needs to be said. Whatever top star left the show in a bad mood because a certain individual was there, instead of running to Dave, why not just tell the individual face to face? That's how we
Hmm.
do things back in the day."
So, I've
What do
got
you make
interest.
of this?
So, I've got an interesting thing is now you've just mentioned that it's not. So, let's look at it from two angles. So, if this like person was named, would it get a lot of attention? Truthfully.
Yes.
Now, what if you put it's an unnamed one? Would it get more attention realistically?
No.
I don't know. I kind of disagree. I think it would because now you're thinking, oh, is it going to be? I mean, you could
I,
literally.
I think that if this article had said Chris Jericho or John Moxley had said this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Yeah.
if that were the case, I think the internet would be exploding about John Moxley said this about CM Punk. Chris Jericho said he was in a bad mood because of CM Punk. And I think it would have been a much bigger deal if the person had actually been named.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of in two minds with that. I feel like it would probably get more attention not being named, but I mean,
I had Joe Graham's comment here. That guy was probably concerned that Punk would go off and punch him in the face.
but
If
here's
Ace
the
Steel
thing.
was around, he might lose a chunk of his skin.
That is true. So obviously, you just mentioned there, obviously, top name. So I mean, have we got any? I don't want to throw names out there, but have you got a rough idea without mentioning who you think it is?
I, I think it's got to be. I mean, I guess it could be Hangman Page, but it's probably either Hangman, Moxley, or Punk. That would be my guesses.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought was obviously Hangman, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, we know what Punk's like. I mean, I feel like he'd be best suited to a Collision because obviously that's a different show. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that going to it Dynamite. It's. I think it's still a bit like tensions running high behind the scenes. You know what I mean? So I feel like Punk at AEW minute Dynamite specifically would be. It's not really the best thing.
Yeah, I just think this is a one-time thing because of the fact that it was in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago demands to see, and I mentioned this on Collision After Dark. Um, Chicago demands to see Punk. I mean, as soon as the show starts, they inundate the show with CM Punk chants. So it's like if you have CM Punk on your roster and he's
Mm-hmm.
active and he's available, and you go to Chicago, you better give them Punk. You're going to have a lot of pissed off people in the crowd, regardless of if it's Dynamite, Collision, pay per view, or whatever. I just think that they had to go with Punk in Chicago. They have to, and if that's the case, then the Elite's going to sit out
Yep.
because they're trying to keep the bad kids separate from each other so they don't get into a fight on the playground again. But yeah, I think it's the logical choice that Tony Khan made. Go with Punk here instead of the Elite in Chicago. But I don't think we're going to see Punk back on Dynamite again for a while.
No, I think he's going to be best suited to Collision, obviously, which I'm sure we'll get onto obviously Collision shortly. But yeah, I feel like at the moment he's just better for obviously Collision.
Now, you can tell that a Canadian wrote this comment when they start putting U's in favorite and flavor. Um, so F and expert, or excuse me, F and wrestling wants to know, what is your favorite flavor of Jello? Do you have a favorite Jello?
Strawberry, plain and simple.
Strawberry.
Plain and simple. I'm a
Yes.
basic guy.
Well, Liam is a basic man. Basic man. He's a basic man, but he has exquisite taste. All right. I personally am not a big fan of Jello. I didn't grow up eating Jello. I always found it to be kind of gross, to be honest with you. So I never really ate Jello. So I know that's kind of a non-answer. You're not used to getting that from the F and expert. I'm usually pretty straightforward, but I can't really attest to Jello.
Yeah. So moving obviously back to obviously this Punk and Elite type thing. Did you see that apparently their contract status is supposed to be on the hush? Is probably the best term to use.
Yes, I did see that. I saw that supposedly the Elite were asked to keep their mouths shut about their contract status. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if this is posturing. I don't know if they just don't want them to tease it because they don't want people to speculate they're going to jump ship like Cody did. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. I guess it all just kind of boils down to what happens with this Punk situation. To bring it back full circle here, it's all kind of interconnected. If they can move on and get along and ignore each other in the hallway or whatever the hell they've got to do to get along and make their millions of dollars and be happy. That's what they got to do. But the question is, are they going to do it? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, because we spoke about this on one of the previous episodes on Paranormal, and we said that if AEW loses the Elite and Kenny Omega, is it a big loss? And the interesting thing we said was, I think it'd hurt more if losing Kenny Omega, not more so with the Bucks, because I feel like there's so many great tag teams, not above them. That's probably the wrong terminology, but you've got obviously House of Black, you've got the Acclaimed. I mean, just some great tag teams there.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, the Bucks, they do their thing, and they've got a large fan base. I like watching the Bucks wrestle. I do. I mean, I don't think they're the greatest tag team ever in human existence, like a lot of people seem to think, but they are very talented, and they can put on a great match with the right partners, with the right opponents in the ring with them. But in the grand scheme of things, if I had to choose between them and Omega, I'm choosing Omega 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Omega's probably the biggest star. No disrespect to the Bucks, but the guys, the matches are more entertaining for me personally. That's just my personal opinion.
I absolutely agree. I mean, Okada versus Omega, their series of matches.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's nothing the Bucks have done that will ever stand up to that.
I mean, I will throw obviously Will Ospreay versus Omega in there as well. I mean, I'll look at what happened at Wrestle Kingdom. I'm expecting Forbidden Door 2 was obviously to be another classic between these two as well.
Now, which do you think is going to be better, or do you think they're going to be equal? Do you think the Wrestle Kingdom match is going to be better, or do you think the Forbidden Door match will be better?
I don't know, because the Wrestle Kingdom one was absolutely up there. Do you know what I mean? I felt like, I don't know, until I obviously see the match, it's kind of hard to say, based on obviously just the actual build up. But until obviously that match happens, I mean, then we can make the assumption.
So, yeah, I agree with that. I'm not sure which one's going to be better. I don't think this is going to be the last match between them. I don't. Um, I kind of expect since Omega won the first one, Osprey is going to win this one. Then they're going to rematch in Wembley. That's kind of what I'm thinking here.
Yeah, I think that's really on the cards, and that kind of makes sense. It's kind of like the Tony Khan's way of thinking. It's like best of 3 matches. Oh, these two are equal, so who's going to win? You never know.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, we all win because
There you
these two
go.
guys work great together. So I'm hoping tomorrow night's match lives up to their Wrestle Kingdom match because I thought it was great.
Do you think that makes it more interesting because now the bar is actually pretty high for this match?
I do. Yeah, I mean, I'm more interested in seeing it this time than I was last time because of the fact that I've seen it before. So I know they're going to try to top it this time because that's just the kind of performers they are.
Mm-hmm.
Effing Wrestling, I keep wanting to call him expert for some reason. I'm the effing expert. Effing Wrestling says, wouldn't the fans make the Forbidden Door 2 better? Not necessarily. I don't necessarily think. I don't see anything wrong with the polite New Japan crowd where they kind of just ooh and ah over big spots. But I don't know. It depends. You know, the fans can sometimes make it better. The fans can sometimes make it worse, in my opinion. What do you think, man?
I want to see Forbidden Door under like a different type of event because if I'm not mistaken, it's under the New Japan banner. Would that be correct in a way? Because obviously you're getting the New Japan crowd in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think Forbidden Door is strictly under the AEW umbrella, but I do think eventually they're supposed to do it in Japan at some point. I want to see that. I want to see them do it in Japan because it's just going to be a much different aesthetic.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but I mean, like I said, the bar was set so high on Forbidden Door. Even with all these injuries, I feel like this may top it because now we've got some bigger matches. Obviously, we've seen Zack Sabre Jr., Bryan Danielson versus Okada, which I cannot wait for. I think that's going to be a classic.
That has been my dream match for years, and I'm pretty sure I've mentioned that I'm pretty sure on the very first episode of Magic of Wrestling I ever did with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said my dream match was Okada Danielson.
I might have to go back and listen to that to see because I'm sure you actually did.
I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah. I mean, that is a match that I've been lobbying for years. So I'm very excited to see it. I hope it lives up to what I want it to be. I think if this had happened 4 or 5 years ago, it'd be one of the greatest matches in the history of professional wrestling. These guys have aged a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if it's going to be as good as it would have been 2, 3, 4 years ago, but I'm hoping that it is.
So the interesting thing is, obviously, I will be honest, I don't watch much of the New Japan stuff. I do see the occasional match, and obviously the last Forbidden Door. When I first saw Okada, I'm like, holy crap, this guy's actually taller than I thought.
Okada's a big dude, man. Yeah, I mean, and the way Okada, the way he does a drop kick looks like the way Randy Orton does a drop kick. They both have the two best drop kicks in the business because they're both super tall men, and the elevation they get on a drop kick looks perfect. Both of them do.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I have really hoped I think this is going to be the match to watch, and I feel like this will be the match of the night. So, right, what else we got for the Magic Weekly?
We'll shift gears here for just a second. Talk about that evil E that you guys all love so much in the audience. It was announced this week that Logan Paul has been added to the Money in the Bank ladder match. Now, my question is for you, Liam. You think Logan Paul's winning this?
I don't think he's winning it. I do think he's going to put on, obviously, because here's the thing, right? And I'm saying this obviously live is when I first saw Logan Paul come into the WWE, it was an eyebrow raiser. I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? But I mean, you've got to admit the guy has worked really hard. He's proved a lot of people wrong. The match which sticks out for me with obviously Logan is obviously against Roman Reigns. You know what I mean? That match in particular. And he does take it seriously. And I don't feel like people misjudge him for obviously what he's done on the internet. I mean, you guys can obviously go back and look what we're talking about there. But no, I don't think he's going to win it. But I feel like he will put on a bit of a show.
See, I'm going to take the opposite view. I think he does win. I think they're going to make him the Money in the Bank winner, and I think they're going to look to have him rematch Roman Reigns down the road. I think that's what they're going to try to do. I don't think he's going to take the title from Roman Reigns. I think he would fail. But I do think that he's going to win Money in the Bank because he's popping up for these like special events, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if he loses at Money in the Bank, he just disappears for insurmountable amount of time, and then he'll just randomly pop up out of nowhere just to do what? So my thinking is he'll win Money in the Bank, he'll disappear for a little while, he'll pop up at a major event, try to cash in, and it'll end up being a big deal. I just think that this guy has such celebrity stature, and the WWE is so in love with
Mm-hmm.
pushing celebrities, especially a celebrity like him who actually kind of takes the business seriously and
Mm-hmm.
performs well in the ring. Um, yeah, I think they'll put it on him. Now, who I want them to put it on is LA Knight. That's who I want to see get it. I don't think
Yeah.
that's who it's going to be. Um, if it wasn't LA Knight, I'd love to see Damian Priest. You know, I think he'd be a good one, but I think it's going to be Logan Paul, unfortunately.
So do you think that obviously if Logan wasn't the celebrity like figure is, do you think it'd be a different like conversation we're having?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if he didn't have celebrity status, he wouldn't even be in the contract. No, I mean, if he was just, Joe Blow YouTuber that like didn't blow up and end up being huge, the WWE wouldn't have even looked at him. They wouldn't have given him a second look. Um, because he wouldn't have had any parlay to fame to get into other endeavors. He wouldn't have boxed Floyd Mayweather in an exhibition match, and he wouldn't be in WWE. So
Fair enough.
no.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't think he's going to win it. You think he's going to win it. So next time, obviously, when his Money in the Bank, I'm not even following
It
when it
is
is
next
actually.
Saturday.
So, but maybe like in 2 weeks' time, we'll be having a discussion saying, "I told you."
Now, I think I've got a pretty good track record here, but you know, I've been wrong and you've been right a couple times, so we'll see what happens here. The last item that I have, we're circling back to AEW again. AEW Collision drew 816,000 viewers for its debut, which is just behind Dynamite of the same week, the viewership of 832,000. Now, my question I would pose to you, Liam, is that viewership, would we view that as a success or a disappointment?
For the opening show, I mean, it's got to be a success. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the one thing I like about Collision is it's different. Do you know what I mean? You've got a different announcement. It's got a different feel. I think the whole thing about it's absolutely, different, and that's what we want. Something different. I don't think if we can say if it's a success at one. I think after so many shows, you start to get a feel like an average. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think this viewership is fine. I think that's very solid for a Saturday night because let's face it, Saturday night's kind of a dead time for
Mm-hmm.
television. I mean, there's a reason why like top tier network shows don't usually run on Saturday nights because it's kind of a death trap. If you're not a sporting event, you typically don't get good ratings on Saturdays. That's just how it is. Um, I am worried about Collision going up against all the major sporting events in the world on
Mm-hmm.
Saturdays. So I don't think their ratings for Collision are going to be that great on average. But yeah, I mean that was a great number, and it was a great show.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, obviously I'm a co-host on Collision After Dark, and you can go back and listen to my comments. I was very happy with that show because to me, that show exemplified what I wanted AEW to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wanted it to be kind of a more serious non WWE professional wrestling show. I didn't want it to be a bunch of over the top comedy gimmicks and that kind of stuff. I thought the look and the feel of Collision was a lot better than Dynamite.
No, I agree. And the one thing, like I said, what stood out for me originally, because when I watched Collision, because obviously I'm in the UK, I didn't get to watch it till the Sunday. I thought, you know what, I'm going to watch it with an open mind. Let's just see, do you know what happens? And I agree, the show was absolutely terrific. I mean, even Kevin Kelly and Nigel McGuinness, who that was the first time I've actually seen him properly on commentary. And to me, they work so well together. I feel like, and I'm going to try and refer to what Eric said here. I feel like when it comes to the color commentator, leave that to Nigel because the guy knows what he's doing. No
Yeah.
disrespect to Kevin, do you know what I mean? I feel like he knows. I mean, obviously he's a big part of the New Japan stuff, but yeah, I think the commentary's working, and like I said, the matches were great. And there wasn't, if you notice, there wasn't much like backstage thing. Not to what I remember, anyway.
Yeah. I mean that they had like the little segment where, Powerhouse Hobbs and Starks talk about winning the Owen Hart tournament. But yeah, I mean this was a in-ring centric show. It was. And I was very happy with it. I thought it was great. And I'm looking forward to the night. I hope it's even better. And AEW Collision is coming to my neck of the woods in August, and I plan on going. So I hope they continue the success of these shows. Effin Wrestling says JR ruined it a little bit. I don't think he ruined it. I mean, he didn't perform very well, that's for sure.
Yeah, and obviously he announced after that that obviously stepping away to heel, which I mean it's kind of sad, but I don't. No, I have to disagree with that comment. I don't think he ruined it. I just felt like he wasn't at his best. That's probably the best terminology I can use.
Yeah, JR just seems like he's in kind of a rough place right now. I mean, he
Mhm.
does. I think he needs to step away for a while. I mean, honestly, I he should probably retire, but you know how these things go, man. Like you get a working professional who's advanced in age. You know, he lost his spouse a couple years ago. What's he going to do? Is he just going to retire and go home and just wither away? Sometimes folks like that, it's best to just kind of keep their mind sharp and keep moving. But I think he needs to take it easy and rest a little bit because he did not appear well.
I think he should do obviously more backstage role because the guy's got the experience. Do you know what I mean? From a business side, in a way.
Yeah, I would like to see more sit down interviews with him because I think he's great at that.
No, I agree
Yeah, I
totally.
mean, I harken back to probably what's the greatest sit down interview series in the history of professional wrestling when Mick Foley first joined the WWE.
Mm-hmm.
And he had that series of sit down interviews with Jim Ross as Mankind, which, of course, at the end of it, famously, he attacked him and put him in the mandible claw. But I mean, it was brilliant. And
Mm-hmm.
JR was brilliant at doing that. So that's what I'd like to see more of. I'd like to see him do more kind of sit down stuff. And he's done that in AEW, but I'd like to see him maybe focus more on that than actually being live on camera.
Yeah, and obviously until JR obviously comes back to obviously, do you know AEW? JR, rest up well, do you know what I mean? Did you actually
Yeah.
manage to see the image with the eye injury?
Yeah. Yeah. I looked it up after our show last weekend and God, that's depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he's blacking out, falling, or what. But yeah, he's gotta take it easy and take better care of himself, man.
Of course. So JR, rest up well and obviously come back stronger. So is that everything for Magic Weekly?
That is the Magic Weekly, my man.
Of course. So before we get into our main event, we're going to say thank you to our sponsor, which is, of course, Dubby, which is obviously the energy drink which is supporting a lot of obviously shows like ours. And now, Mr. Isaac, you probably know more about this than me at the moment.
W is an energy drink that is used by streamers, gamers, podcasters, hedge fund operators, presidents of the United States, monarchs of the UK. Everybody drinks W because it gives you the energy, it gives you the mental and physical dexterity to get through what you've got to do. And you could go to w.gg, use code Effin Wrestling, get 10% off, tell them Mr. Isaac sent you, and they'll be happy with that.
Of course. So that's www.w.gg. Use a promo code Effin Wrestling for 10% off. I'm actually going to be ordering one of these in the next couple of weeks. Everybody's talking about it, so I cannot wait for it to turn up.
I've got to try it too. Yeah, I really need to.
Right then, so we've obviously got through everything else, so let's get into our main event.
The main event.
I've got to
Do
be
it,
honest.
Liam. Do it. Do it.
Got to get that quarter there, pal.
You want a quarter, little boy?
I've got to be honest. I missed that last week because obviously we did the trivia thing.
Joe Graham says Mr. Isaacs, our president's not using Dubby. No, our president is probably using like every stimulant known to man to just stand up. Poor guy.
Poor guy. Right then, so today obviously we're doing our favourite series, which is obviously the highs and lows. And Mr. Isaacs, you obviously chose obviously HBK. Any particular reason why?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously when you talk about prototypical wrestlers from the 90s that inspired virtually every millennial age professional wrestler that's active today, you think of two people. You think of Bret the Hitman Hart. You think of the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. They are the two prototypes of which all modern day wrestling is built upon. And, we've done about 3 whole episodes on Bret Hart now in various forms. I thought it was a good time to take a look at HBK. And, I got my red tinted sunglasses here and I'm ready to party.
And there we go. So just to explain, obviously, to people what's listening. So we've got 10 things, obviously, from Shawn Michaels' career, a range of stuff. Mr. Isaacs has not seen these, so this is going to be the first time he's actually seen these. And we're just going to discuss them, and we have to decide whether it's a high or a low. So I'm excited for some of these, because some of these I couldn't decide myself. So are you ready?
Let's go.
So first one I've got today is, of course, the infamous Marty Jannetty kick. Now, obviously during the 80s and the 90s, obviously we got the Rockers, which was a great tag team. Obviously a lot of fans absolutely loved these, but everyone thought that these guys would never actually split up. Of course, during a segment on was it the Brutus, the barbershop thing?
The barbershop. Yes.
Yep. So, and yeah, obviously this is where the Heartbreak Kid was born. So overall, what's your thoughts on this?
So yeah, this was on the segment called the Barbershop because Brutus the Barber Beefcake, during this time, if I'm not mistaken, was not wrestling because this is when he had his parasailing accident and he was. So yeah, obviously everyone has seen this. Everyone has seen reference to this. This is the where Shawn Michaels turned on his partner Marty Jannetty, super kicked him, threw his head through the glass pane.
Yep.
And officially became a single star. This shocked me when I was a kid. I was very disappointed by it. But this is like the crowning achievement of becoming a single star for Shawn Michaels. This is definitely a high.
Yeah, I have to agree it is a high because it's like when you think about it, this is obviously, as I mentioned in the intro there, it's the birth of obviously the HBK, and obviously if we didn't get this, would we get the HBK? Do you know what I mean? Obviously, I agree with Joseph Graham there. I think it's a high as well, and it's probably. Would you think it's one of the most talked about when it comes to Shawn Michaels?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a whole T-shirt shop called the Barbershop Window that was pretty active in the independent scene for a few years. Yeah, I mean, this is a defining moment. I mean, it is. This is the moment that Shawn Michaels started to become the Heartbreak Kid. And I just remember the image of Jannetty being thrown through the glass pane, and then like you could see like the liquid from the glass was like pouring down as he was like sitting in a bunch of shards of broken glass. That image is just one of those images that's just going to stick with me for the rest of my life as a wrestling fan. It was an iconic moment.
There you go. So obviously the first one's a high. Now this is the one I was really torn with, and it was overselling against Hulk Hogan. Now, apparently there was obviously a bit of a backstage type thing here. Now, I don't know obviously ins and outs, but this was SummerSlam 2005. And I'll always remember like Shawn Michaels was literally overselling absolutely everything. But I mean, what do you remember about this and what's your thoughts?
Shawn Michaels is, aside from this, he's one of the greatest sellers of all time. Like the way that he takes a beating and sells it, he's just one of the best to ever do it. Obviously, in this match, he highly embellished the spots, to say the least, because I don't think he was very happy about doing this. I don't think he was very happy that Hogan was dictating the direction that this went, and he kind of just randomly had to turn heel out of nowhere and go up against Hogan. I think he was frustrated. I don't think he wanted to be in the spot, and this is what he did. He he grossly over exaggerated every punch and every kick, and I think he denied that he did that, but it's very clear that he did.
It's the most obvious thing ever. I mean, I didn't know he denied it, but it's like, come on now, go back and watch the match. Let you be the judge of that.
I'm pretty sure that at some point in an interview he denied that he intentionally did this, but he definitely did. It wasn't a good moment for him. It's not anything that's memorable. People are going to remember it for the wrong reasons because of his gross overselling. I think that Joe Graham says here it was supposed to be a series, but Hogan changed it at the last minute. Yeah, I couldn't remember off the top of my head. I knew Hogan was going to change something, and HBK was pissed off about it, and this is the result of it. This is definitely a low. This is not a high.
Yeah, I was kind of torn, but now obviously listen to what you said there. I have to agree. I think it is a low. Does anybody in the comments got high or low?
Joe Graham, do you think that's a low or a high? All right. Well, nobody said anything yet, so we can go ahead and move on.
Okay, so next up we've got it's one of my actual favorite matches with HBK, and it's of course WrestleMania 25 against The Undertaker. The one thing I always remember about this, it was like good versus evil. I'll always remember Shawn Michaels' actual entrance, coming down with the white, and probably one of the best matches, obviously, of the modern day. I mean, the same thing with The Undertaker with the camera guy. There's just so many moments in this match that I remember, and it's probably up there for one of my favorite matches. What about you?
Yeah. Just before we get there, Effin Wrestling says that was a low, and Joe Graham says it was a low but hilarious. I agree. But yes, WrestleMania 25. This, in my opinion, is the second best WWE match ever, in my opinion. Just in my favorite list of WWE matches, just behind WrestleMania 13, Austin versus Brett. This is my favorite Shawn Michaels match. I love this match. It was brilliant storytelling. These two guys were at the pinnacle of their career, in my opinion, during this era. Into the 2000s, I think these two men did their best work in the ring. And that might be a controversial point, especially for Shawn Michaels. I think Shawn probably did his better character work in the 90s, but I think his actual in-ring work was better in the 2000s. Him and Taker gelled incredibly well together. One of the greatest matches of all time. Absolutely loved it.
So where do you stack, obviously, the year after with these two?
Call me Canada Dry, damn it. I'm not effing wrestling, says the guy whose name is effing wrestling. Well, we know you're Canadian because you put the extra U in those words earlier. Favorite and flavor. We know that.
There you go.
You're not American, Draw. We know that.
Exactly. And it says effing wrestling on the name, so we're going to name you effing wrestling. So moving back to obviously what we said there is, where does WrestleMania 26 stack up with this match? Do you think it's above, on par, or?
I think it's just below it. Because I think their WrestleMania 26 match was great also. And if I put together a top 5 favorite WWE matches of all time, 26 would probably fall in the 4 or 5 slot, and 25 would be number 2 for me.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. So I'm going to say that's definitely a high because the match is absolutely terrific.
Joe Graham says, I agree. Shawn's second half is in itself a Hall of Fame. It really is. It's like he had 2 careers.
Yeah, I agree there totally. Rightfully so, an absolute legend. So
you're on effing wrestling, LOL, with an extra I at the end.
Dear. So I'll move along. So the next one I've got is, and it's one I actually found. I don't know how much you know about this, but it's a forgotten match. Now I've just got a little quote about this. So during Shawn Michaels' absence between 98 and 2002, Shawn kept himself busy by opening a wrestling school and promotion to run along with his school. It in what became the forgotten match. Shawn Michaels competed in a Texas Wrestling Alliance in a match against the quote-unquote top heel of Venom, actually winning the promotion's World Heavyweight Championship in a bunkhouse brawl match. So, I mean, I don't know if you know much about this. This is obviously the first time I've read this before we came on the air.
I don't know much about it. I was aware that he had done that because he put a lot of focus into opening his own wrestling school. Which is part of the reason why we have Bryan Danielson today. Bryan Danielson went through Shawn Michaels' wrestling school. That's how he got his start. And that ended up helping Danielson later because Shawn Michaels was a big advocate for him during his run as Daniel Bryan. Whenever Vince McMahon didn't see any money in him, Shawn kind of tried to talk him the other direction. So, yeah, I mean, he had an impact here, definitely, for nothing else because of that. But obviously, leaving the WWE and just doing something in a small circuit, he was kind of trying to start up his own thing. I don't think it really worked too well. I mean, I'm hesitant to call it a low because I don't think he really, I don't think he was hurt by it or anything. But I guess I would have to consider it a low because it's something nobody's going to remember.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason I gave it a low, is because it's like it's the reason it's called the forgotten match. I mean, nobody's going to remember it, but yeah, I mean, not really much you can say on that one, but move along. So the next one, obviously, we covered this to high heaven. I mean, you probably know which one I'm talking about. So we're not going to spend much time on this, but it's of course Montreal. So we've obviously covered Montreal from Brett's side. Now, obviously, we're going to cover it from Shawn's side. Yeah, not going to spend much time on this, but thoughts?
Uh, this one you could kind of be a little torn on because he got the WWE title, but it was under really obviously controversial reasons. And you could make an argument either way that A, this diminished him because it was an illegitimate win, or
Yep.
B, you could also make the argument that it legitimized him more as a heel.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at it strictly from an HBK perspective, I'm a little torn on this one, honestly. I'm going to say for him, it probably ended up being a high.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, because obviously you will get the title, even though it is obviously by means controversial fashion, but it is a torn one. Do you know what I mean? From obviously Shawn's side, in a sense, but is that more because obviously all the backstage politics in a way?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes him look bad as a professional, but at the same time, it did more to get him over as a heel. So, I mean, it's kind of like a high and a low. It's kind of like a mid.
Yeah. What about you guys in the comments? What do you guys think? Because obviously this is obviously the most talked about thing we've had on this channel.
Canada Dry, not effing wrestling, says, "What if Shawn had been a good dude the whole time in WWE? Would he have been as big a star? Probably not, because I think him being an asshole is part of what drove him to do better. I think his ego is what drove him to be a star."
Yeah, so obviously Canada Dry sent me this question. Obviously, I've just been trying to find it there, but I don't know. Here's the thing. I feel like injuries obviously played a big part with his career as well. Obviously, after the Hell in a Cell match, obviously he was out of wrestling for a while. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like the injuries did play a big part in his career in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it bridged the gap between the two major parts of his career. Because he had completely screwed up his back and thought that his career was completely over. And then he came back, had a resurgence, and kind of like Joe Graham said earlier, he basically had a second Hall of Fame career. If you looked at it as two separate wrestlers, it would be two different wrestlers in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so like I said, this is probably one of those where you can.
For HBK, it's a high just because of what happened after. Yeah, absolutely. Because he got the title, he got heel heat, and he benefited from that.
Yeah, I think obviously that's probably the best thing we can end on that one. So next up we've got is, and it's probably one of my favorite things is, of course, it's DX. I mean, how can we not add DX in there? I mean, you're talking about, there's a reason they're called the most controversial group in wrestling, but I've got to be honest, despite being controversial, these guys are absolutely entertaining. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when you think before The Rock kind of rose up and became a big star, this is when he was still kind of a heel in the Nation of Domination, and he was kind of like a mid-carder. He wasn't really up to the upper tier yet. You had Stone Cold Steve Austin, you had D-Generation X. That was like the two big things to tune in and watch on Monday Night Raw. This was huge. I had the DX Suck It shirt, got in trouble for wearing it in school, as I'm sure a lot of men my age did, and possibly women too. But yeah, I mean, this was a very big boom for him as a pop culture figure. Kind of reinvented himself as the D-Generation X version of Shawn Michaels. Bringing in Triple H and China to kind of help him out and be his henchman made him seem more important. He still had the WWF title at the time. I think this was a high.
Oh, absolutely. I think it was a high. What do you think to obviously the return in, I think it was the early 2000s?
Yeah, that wasn't great. I mean, it was okay. They got pops and everything, but I think that was more kind of a nostalgia run than like anything else. Yeah, I would say that's probably a low.
Yeah.
And I think Joe Graham kind of agrees. DX first run was high. Subsequent runs went lower and lower due to the law of diminishing returns. Yeah. I mean, it felt like a reunion show. It felt like, how the rock band Kiss always has like a farewell tour like every 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
That's kind of what this feels like. Like they go on their farewell tour, and then 5 years later they come back for a reunion and then do another farewell tour. That's kind of what it felt like. A little long in the tooth.
Yeah, I have to agree there, Tully. I feel like the first run was absolutely really, really great. There was some moments, obviously, in the second run, but overall, I feel like, yeah, the first run was absolutely better. We better get
Jericho versus Michaels feud, my absolute fave. Now, Canada Dry, do we always have to talk about a Canadian here? I mean, come on.
And guess what? I'm either going to piss him off because it's not even on the list. Oh, dear. Should we move along quick?
Let's move along.
So next up, obviously, I've got is teaming with God against the McMahons. I've got to be honest, I don't remember much about this feud at all. I don't even remember the match in particular, but this is just stupid. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, this was just this was one of those like hardcore heel things that Vince McMahon did. Because around this time, when HBK made his comeback, you know, he became, and this is well publicized, he became a born again Christian, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, he gave up the booze, gave up the womanizing and all that stuff, and worked on becoming a better man, found God, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, this was kind of the time where Vince McMahon would make fun of you for things like that. And so he made a tag team match where Shawn Michaels' partner was going to be God.
It's just so stupid.
Yeah. This wasn't very good. I'm going to call this a low. This isn't anything that's going to be remembered in Shawn Michaels' career as anything other than just stupid.
No, I absolutely agree. It has to be a low there, Tall. I mean, I just remember the match being announced, but never remember the actual match, so I don't even know what happened. And essentially, God was a light.
But I mean, this is kind of the era where Vince McMahon would make fun of people's, you know, personal deals, like making fun of him for being a born again Christian, making fun of Jeff Hardy for being alcoholic.
Mhm.
You know, like this was just the stuff that he did back in those days. It was very distasteful, and that's what he did.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were actually way ahead on time, so we may obviously be able to talk about some people's things, you know, if they want
Jericho
to.
throwing it through the Geritron 5000.
Yeah, so the thing is, obviously, we're way ahead on time. So once we've done all these, if we get some time, people in the comments can throw some to us. Do you know what I mean? We can discuss them.
We can improvise and talk about whatever you want to talk about, my man.
Of course. So we've got 3 left on here, and then we'll see where we are. So next up, I've got is obviously working for NXT. Now, the one thing I love about this in particular is there's so many stories from obviously wrestlers. I mean, Adam Cole's a prime example that working under Shawn Michaels' tutelage is absolutely terrific, nothing but good things. And I kind of like this. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a good way of Shawn Michaels to continue his legacy in the business. You know, like I said earlier, there's 2 prototypical wrestlers that influenced all of today's young wrestlers, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels.
Mhm.
One of those guys is now running the developmental program of the WWE. I mean, he obviously has a lot of knowledge to impart here, and I think this is a way that he could continue his legacy by instilling his values and his ethic and his teachings about how to work an audience, how to work in the ring, how to sell in particular, how to cut promos. I mean, he's a great guy to be able to teach the next generation of talent those type of skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing I love is when you watch the NXT product, you can tell obviously Michaels has influenced, you know, some segments. I'm not saying them all. Like the prime example is when obviously Toxic Attraction, like obviously split up. You could tell the kick at the door. I'm like, yeah, that's improvised from Shawn Michaels. I think even a lot of fans pointed that out.
I think you meant to say hairless HBK is low. I don't think he's homeless. But yeah, bald HBK is not a good look. It's not. Him at that Crown Royal event or what Crown Jewel, not Crown Royal, that's alcohol. Crown Jewel when he was at that event and he had the bald head and they were going against the Brothers of Destruction. That was terrible.
Yeah, it was.
If we had to improvise and throw that on the list, I would call it a low. But I guess for him, it would personally be a high because he probably made 7 figures for that one match.
There you go. So next up we've got is, and it's of course NWO HBK. Now the interesting thing is, I only ever remember the entrance with this match. I don't remember anything he did actually with the NWO. So enlighten me on this one.
Yeah, he was just here as in like a managerial capacity. This was before he actually came back as a wrestler. Yeah, this wasn't memorable at all. Like I didn't like this. There wasn't anything very good about it. The rehash of the NWO after they purchased WCW and they brought in Hogan, Hall, and Nash, and then it eventually turned into this. It was completely forgettable. I'm going to call it a low.
Yeah, I'm going to move along. This one is definitely a low. Like I said, I only remember the entrance. I didn't remember much of everything about it. So yeah, that's a low for me. So the last one I've got on my list is, and then obviously we'll get onto the comments, which is the infamous ladder match with Razor Ramon. I just want to say this is absolutely a terrific match. I still watch it to this day. I mean, what do you think to this match?
This was a great match. Great match. One of the best matches in WWE history. Again, I know we said that several times here, but most of the greatest matches in WWE history did involve Shawn Michaels in some way. This is one of them. The best match of Scott Hall's career, bar none. Excellent match. Really put Shawn Michaels on the map as a worker. I'm going to call this a high.
Yeah, it has to be a high because I feel like this actually paved the way for future ladder matches. You know what I mean? I have to agree with that. And as you mentioned there, it makes Scott Hall look good. And it obviously makes them both look good. So, yeah, it has to be a high for me as well. So, that's how we say our list. So, guys, if you've got any in the comments, throw some at us and we'll let us know.
The optics was bad, especially Super Kick Booker T out the Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, that was about the only thing I remember that he did was super kick Booker T and kick him out of the NWO. Let's see. Joe Graham says, here's a good question. Which Mania match is better, HBK versus Jericho or HBK versus Angle?
Ooh, okay. So for me, I'm gonna have to say HBK versus Angle. I was thinking about putting that on there, and I mean we spoke highly about Kurt Angle being one of the best in ring, but yeah, for me, it has to be HBK versus Angle.
I would agree. HBK versus Angle. I absolutely loved that match. That was brilliant, terrific. Prime Kurt Angle was just a monster. And HBK was doing so good during this era that that match was just awesome for me. And I mean, the Jericho match obviously was great too. But I'm partial to the Angle match. I like that one better.
Yep, absolutely. So, any more comments? Obviously, I'm going to throw some at us.
Stole the idea from Brett. Hi.
Dear. Yeah, we've obviously got a bit of time, guys. So you can, like I said, throw some at us or one.
But what did you? Let me get your thoughts on this. What did you like his '90s work better, or did you like his work in the 2000s better?
See, the thing is, obviously, because I got into wrestling late, obviously I had to go back and watch his 90s stuff. But yeah, for me, from what I've obviously watched from his 90s stuff, I feel like it's absolutely, terrific. There was some good moments from the 2000s stuff, but I just felt like it was more like a reunion type thing. I think we said it obviously in the DX like segment we talked about. For me, yeah, it has to. Yeah, it's got to be the 90s stuff. What about you?
Yeah, and I think I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think his best character work was in the 90s. I think his best promos, I think the way he carried himself, the swagger and everything, I think he was better in the 90s. But I think as far as an actual in-ring worker goes, I think he was better in the 2000s. And that's probably a hot take. A lot of people probably disagree with it, but he had great matches with Cena, with Angle. I mean, he had matches with Benoit. His Triple H feud was great. The Taker matches, 25 and 26, the Ric Flair match, the retirement match. Those were great matches. I just think in ring, I think his 2000s work was a lot better.
Oh, that's an interesting one. So,
do you have any thoughts on his Jericho feud?
I always remember obviously when Jericho punched his wife, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to refresh myself a little on it because it's been a while since I've seen any of it. But yeah, I mean, Jericho was on fire during this time too. I mean, because this was like prime Jericho when he really kind of hit his stride as a character. And yeah, I mean, they did some great work together. I like some of his work with some other guys like Angle and such better as far as in the ring goes. But yeah, the punching the wife thing, that was great.
I mean, what can we say there? I mean, we literally just talked about somebody like getting punched and we love it. So
I love HBK, but his 2000s work is so much better. HBK versus Jericho Angle come back. Yeah. So Joe Graham basically agrees with what I said. Yeah. I mean, those 2000s matches are just hard to beat, man.
Yeah. And if it was
huge for Jericho. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, that, obviously HBK is one of the biggest main eventers in the history of the WWE. So working with Jericho kind of elevated Jericho and kind of put him on that upper strata as well. So yeah, I mean, that was a big booster for Chris Jericho to work with him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll finish off obviously with one question is obviously to summarize everything is looking back, like so 5 years from now, how would you remember obviously HBK's legacy overall?
Uh, one of the best overall talents
Mhm.
in the history of the business. I mean, straight up. I mean, you know, from a technical wrestling perspective, he was solid. Not as good as someone like a Bret Hart or a Kurt Angle, but he could sell his ass off. He
Mhm.
had great character work. He had a great look. The hair and everything, like in the rock star look. Obviously, he got his influence from Bret Michaels, the lead singer of Poison. So he
Mhm.
came out like an '80s hair metal star. Um, but yeah, I mean, his legacy is just the flamboyant look, the selling, the great matches that he had with Taker, and the retirement match with Flair, even though Flair didn't actually retire afterwards. His long WWF title run, the Iron Man match with Bret Hart, which was great. We didn't touch on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, he's just one of the greatest champions in WWE history. I mean, whether you love the guy or hate him or approve of his actions or disapprove of his actions, you really can't take that away from him.
No, absolutely. I think I mean, I can't even add on that. You've done absolutely terrific with obviously what you've said there.
The fact he
Yeah.
sang his own theme song as well. Yes. Now, here's a question. Do you prefer the HBK version or the version that Sensational Sherry sang, which was the original version?
Oh, I don't know. I actually like the HBK one. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's more fun. No disregard to obviously the original, but I just feel like I I remember the HBK one more.
Right. Well, I mean, the HBK one is the one that he's been running with for many, many, many years. But those first couple of years, he had the Sensational Sherry one. But yeah, it's always funny to hear HBK sing his own theme. Canada
uh,
Dry says less than Brett. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if I had to compare the two of them side by side, obviously I'm more of a Brett guy than I am Shawn. But Shawn is just the overall package too.
there you go.
Jericho
So
is a smell fungus. Okay, what type of fungus is he, and is there some kind of ointment that could fix that?
we're 58 minutes in, and Haney decides to say smell fungus.
Here's one from Kush. That's a good one. If they ever had this match, who do you think would win between HBK and The Rock? What do you think?
See, the thing, I'm gonna have to say HBK. I mean, I felt like Rock was more like entertainment side. Obviously, HBK was more technically, for me personally, better in the ring.
HBK was definitely better in the ring. There's no doubt about that. Um, but The Rock, when he was a main eventer and he was on top, was absolute fire. And I
Mhm.
think that if HBK and The Rock had wrestled each other, when The Rock was at the height of his popularity and HBK had been like a very over heel,
Mhm.
I think that could have drawn a lot of money. I would have loved to have seen that. And I think ultimately in that feud, I think The Rock would have went over.
No, absolutely, and that's really, really great.
The promos would have been gold between HBK and The Rock. I absolutely agree.
That is true. That is true. I have to agree there totally. So yeah, let's wrap all everything up. So don't forget, obviously AEW Collisions. Obviously, immediately after AEW Collision, obviously you're going to be on there with obviously JFB, Canada Dry, and who's the fourth guest? I'm not quite sure what that is.
I am not sure either. Canada Dry, can you reveal the fourth panelist?
And of
I think I
course,
know who it is, but I don't want to speak out of turn if it's not who it is.
okay. And of course, the All Different Wrestling Show is back tomorrow as they're doing the Forbidden Door review show. So I can't wait for that because obviously there's some great matches on the card. And yeah, I mean, so let's wrap everything up, shall we? So
It's
if you want to,
Kush.
that oh, it is Kush. Oh,
Yeah, I was thinking it was Kush, but I didn't want to speak out of turn and say that if it wasn't him. So Kush will be with us. It'll be the first time I've been on a podcast with Kush, so I'm looking forward to that.
he's a great guy. He's absolutely terrific. So absolutely enjoy that. So yeah, if you want to follow us on social media, you can head to fmwrestling.com. All our social medias are on there, right at the bottom. There we go. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're absolutely everywhere, right?
We are everywhere that wrestling can be found.
Of course. And if you want a t-shirt, I mean, we've got absolutely loads of t-shirts. You can head to prowrestlingtees.com/FM Wrestling. You can buy yourself the All FM Wrestling Show, which is modeled by the friend of the show, Natalia Markova. Or you can get yourself the Magical Wrestling one, which is modeled by our good friend Dollywood. And of course, Mr. Isaac, tell everybody about the old school.
Now, if you like old school wrestling, And I know you do. You can go to prowrestlingtees.com/. And get you an adorable Adrian Adonis t-shirt, who is going to be on an upcoming episode of Vice's series Dark Side of the Ring. Joe Graham says, don't forget Twitch. Yes. Go to effin wrestling, twitch.tv/effin wrestling. It's my account. I've partnered up with effin wrestling here, and I'm going to be streaming some games, particularly AEW Fight Forever that comes out next weekend. So I hope that you all will join me, and we can play against each other. We can do it live. We can all join in and watch. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to slam Canada Dry through a flaming table. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. effin wrestling, twitch.tv.
Of course. So, on behalf of me, the magician, and the effing expert, any final words from the expert?
Guys, I hope you guys all have a great weekend. Forbidden Doors tomorrow. It's going to be a great show. And check out Collision After Dark tonight, because obviously I'm going to be that on as well. I don't know if I'm going to do red. I might switch back out to blue. But everybody out there, I just want you all to channel the words of our good friend Canada Dry and just keep fighting.